Hi, everybody. It's Steve Olson with WSO Reporter with Marshall Masters, our special guest today. Marshall Masters has a long history in the Nibiru, Wormwood, Hercules, Marduk world. Welcome, Marshall.
Pleasure to be back, Steve.
And Marshall has been with us before, and he'll be with us again. And Marshall, the first thing that I got up today on the screen, just for our viewers, is this new Soho image, and I wanted to get your take on it because we look at images all the time at WSO, and it would be fun
Right.
for you to take a look at one with us today.
Sure. I'm looking at this. This is the Soho from 4/22/16 at 054.
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay, and I presume you are talking about uh, what looks like a smudge down around the 8 o'clock position.
Yep.
Okay. We've at Yowza, we've seen Soho imagery used by other people extensively. We really do not trust anything that's controlled by the government because what we've seen more often than not is manipulation. We've caught them photoshopping images. We've caught them pulling out entire sequences. Uh, for every scientist that looks at something like this, you got two spooks that are looking at it, and they're really deciding what is going to go to the scientist and what's not going to go to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So um, they have to balance how they let things go. Maybe people can find something that slips through the cracks in the floor. But as a rule, we just, with all of the satellite stuff, we gave up on it. And that was really, I think it was about at Yowza when we did the Ulysses study. And I'll go see if I can find out. This was pretty interesting because it was over polar overflights of the sun with the Ulysses probe. And that for us was actually a smoking gun. The Here we go. I got the article, and I'll send you the link on YouTube. And this was something we did back in 2008, and it was the only time that we saw something useful come out of um, a you know something that came frankly useful from the government. I mean, damn, those guys are um, they're just always manipulating and doing stuff with the data. So you just get to a point where we just don't want to waste time scrambling after crumbs. But
So
we
in this
do find a
case,
few things that are good.
yeah,
So the Ulysses probe was useful for us.
yeah.
And the final results, the Ulysses probe, um, actually, what they found was solar southern hemisphere, increased southern hemisphere activity on the sun, where the sun was responding obviously to some sort of inbound perturber in the southern skies. And we had that information, so it was useful for us. It helped us to verify at that time that yes, we had an incoming perturber, so we had a consistent lock on our theory. So that data was useful. Other than that, since then, now we just really don't follow it. Um, you see with like stereo A, stereo B, uh, all of a sudden they're saying, well, we're turning circuits off because they're failing. There's always, with all of these spacecraft that NASA operates, when something interesting starts to happen, that's when they turn them off. That's when they say, oh, equipment failure, which was the case with IRAS in 1983. And we had a government whistleblower, someone who actually had a security clearance to read the jacket on what really happened with IRAS in '83. And the IRAS, it was an infrared telescope that they put out in space to do a sky survey. And the purpose of it was they wanted to see if they could find something that they were actually detecting evidence of with the Pioneer probes. And they did. They found the binary twin to our sun, and it stood out like a sore thumb in infrared. Invisible light, it's really got to come close because it's a very dirty object, shrouded by a lot of iron dust. But in terms of infrared, it just boom, lights up. And so they tracked it. The minute they tracked it, what they did was they said that the cooling system on board the spacecraft had failed, so the camera was no longer working, which would then explain why there were still in a signals traffic back and forth between IRAS. But and the Europeans didn't buy it, particularly the Italians. They were bloody incensed about it. But what happened was by saying, well, the camera's down, it's the cooling circuit for the camera, then they could go ahead and start pulling all of that image data in. And what they did was they used the navigation thruster fuel on board the spacecraft to keep it pointed at our second sun for as long as possible until it was all exhausted and they lost control of the spacecraft. And that's the real story about IRAS. So, you know, that's people send us Soho pictures all the time. Just don't, I just sometimes you just feel like you're chasing ghosts in the machine, to be honest.
Yeah, doesn't it feel, so I'm relatively new to the observations, so I'm easily sucked into this stuff, right? And
Yeah, you see Nancy Leaders, she follows Soho a lot, and it's like her image analysis sometimes most creative. But that's we just don't bother with it.
well, let's talk about that a little bit more. So in '83, they put up the IRS. I've heard the story before, and if you haven't heard the story before, folks, what Marshall is laying out is what our government did in response to some perturbances that they noticed on the Pioneer spacecraft. And I'm sure there were other, indications that made it worthwhile to build an IR telescope. Let me tell you what you had to do to build an IR telescope in '83. We had to cool that thing down to some amazingly low temperature. It's not like today where you can just go get an IR camera off the shelf. They actually had to build a cooling unit for this thing, and it was very, very high advanced technology for us at the time. And I mean, they invested a ton of money in that satellite. Okay, so anyway, this IR thing gets cold enough, and the reason they had to make it so cold was because then that way it could see the contrast of the heat signatures, and that's what Marshall's talking about. So then Italy gets ticked off. This is the first time I've ever heard that, so that's kind of juicy to me. Do you know of what the other countries' reactions to it, or how the United States shared that information after they learned concretely that this was happening?
What is share? I mean, yes, I mean, you really feel like you're playing a game on TV. Yeah, I'll take what is share for 200. Uh, Government shares nothing. NASA stands for never a straight answer, okay?
Yeah, but it seems like there is other governments. I mean, from evidence I've seen, like Russia seems to know about it, China seems to know about it. Did they have to find out on their own, or spy on us to find out? Is that what happened?
Well, they know a lot about it. Other governments have been more forthcoming, I think, but there is basically a real heavy cap on this. So other governments, I think, would want to come out. They would want to go into full disclosure on this. They'd want to go on full disclosure about ETs,
Yep.
but there is a huge amount of suppression right now. Huge.
Well, and asking why is not the right question. Okay, in my opinion, right?
Right.
To me, the more right question is, and it is kind of why, but if the motive is the question I'm going to ask. If the motive is to keep the population from going into a complete panic, that almost seems reasonable to me. You know what I mean?
That's not the reason.
That's what I want to hear from Marshall Masters. What do you think the motive is?
They want to kill us.
Oh,
Come on. Wakey, wakey. Smell the chemtrail flu, baby. Okay? They want to kill us. Look, I mean, I tell people this have for years. I've known about this and really came to understand what was really going on back around 2005. Okay? And it was like when you realize what's happening, it hits you in the gut.
it
I
really does.
mean,
Yeah.
on my mother's side of the family, all my relatives in Europe were murdered by the Nazis in the concentration camps.
I'm sorry,
And I
Marshall.
often have wondered how they dealt with being loaded up into cattle cars and knowing they were being rolled off to their deaths, and what was their level of acceptance? I mean, were they, just so stunned by it, going, I simply cannot believe that someone could be this inhumane to orchestrate industrial scale murder. And, perhaps a part of them was clinging to some desperate hope, like being tied to the rail of a, railway ties, or, and the train, you hear a train coming and you're going, it's going to go through the switching yard and go off on another track, and thump, thump, you're it. Uh, it's really a terrible thing for people to consider. But, look at what's happening with chemtrail flu. And I talk about this exhaustively, and exhaustively is the right word, because I've just come over the chemtrail flu, and I can tell you it really pulls the life out of you. And during the initial stages of it, you're going to spend evenings wondering if you're going to be all night in an emergency room. It's something that um, Alex Jones and others believe it killed Merle Haggard. Prince just died, and down at the bottom of the article, he had that flu. All right. And he was 57 years old. So this is a very deadly thing that they're spraying on us, and they're prepping for a Holocaust. I have a podcast on my site at yowza.com, YOWUSA.com, with Susan Shumsky. And it's really kind of dealing with paralysis and fear for planning. But in there, I talk uh, about the flu that we caught, and we're going to follow up on it with a substantial article. My wife Jennifer caught it from me. Um, it was very dicey. It's very, very deadly, very serious. They call it a flu. It's not a flu. It's not a cold. You go into a hospital, doctors don't know what it is, but they report that it has flu-like symptoms. And when you start looking at the CDC data, all right, then you clearly are seeing what is an artificial statistical event, which is totally anomalous when compared with naturally occurring events. And they have, they're tracking colds and flus and other things. Uh, when you look especially at hospitalizations with this chemtrail flu, it just skyrockets right off the chart. So what they're doing, I believe, at this point is that they're spreading it to test their disbursement systems. All right, how well can they deliver this into what size of an area and how effectively? Is it going to penetrate into that area? Because whatever they sprayed, they know, and they've clinically tested it. They understand exactly what it is, what it does, and it's something that will be monitored by the CDC without the CDC really understanding it. at an official level, shall we say. And, then they can see, well, how much are we on target? Think about, Korea's had nuclear weapons for some time. And it was disturbing when they, announced that they had their bomb. But what really bothers everybody is when they come out and say, guess what? We have a three-stage rocket capable of taking our bomb and dropping it on the west coast of the United States. So the delivery mechanism is really the tail that wags the dog. You can have whatever kind of weapon you want, but if you can't deliver it, then the weapon's useless. So that's what they've been testing, and they did all this spraying around spring break. You can see clearly the statistical trending in the data from CDC. We saw it. We watched the chemtrails here in Reno Sparks area. We have very good clear skies, and so if you're living in some place like where I was before in Santa Cruz County, California, it's always overcast and cloudy over there, mostly because of all of the coal-fired plants they built in China. And so you just didn't see the chemtrailing. But here you see it. And uh, what we saw that caught our attention was that first they're at a lower altitude. They generally are 20 to 25,000 feet. Uh, they were spraying as low as they could go without encroaching into civilian airspace. And it was a very dense type of spray that they're using. Um, this stuff is very clumpy because there's a real heavy chemical mixture in it. Probably has a high viscosity. So when you see it coming apart, it doesn't. Contrails just disappear. You know, really much like you have steam coming out of a tea kettle. But chemtrails will cover the entire sky. They'll just hang up there for the longest time. And what these were doing is that when they came apart, they looked like zippers unzipping because it would just clump, 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 one clump after another. And it's very, very heavy. So now we're very mindful, having caught this flu, when we're looking up and we see them doing this kind of spraying, um, you know, it's time to go indoors. And it's also something you want to keep in mind is that when they spray in the afternoons, it'll be in the evening that all of this is going to come down on your head, because when the air starts to cool, then it's going to fall to the ground. So, you really want to think twice about nighttime activities. If it's a nice night and they've been spraying during the day and you want to go play goofy golf, you're going to get goofied.
Oh my. Well, we did some independent testing, and a lot of people have tested what's coming out of the sky. So we're by no means the first people to do it. But when we ran our tests, we found aluminum,
Yep.
super high aluminum, lithium,
Yep.
and barium,
Yep.
and other stuff too. But it's the same exact, basically chemical signature that I saw from previous tests. We did ours in March 22nd.
Well, you were lucky to find a laboratory that would actually test your samples.
I really can't talk about that much.
Okay. Is that one of those things, if you told me, you'd have to shoot me?
That's right. So no,
Okay.
it was really done kind of in the open. I'm just kidding. It was done in the open. It was one of those like concerned citizens brought a sample to the university. They tested it, not knowing what the purpose of it was or anything like that. And then I think we snuck one through is what we did.
Yeah, you did. You
But
did. You got one through the cracks. You were lucky. You found a student who didn't understand that their career could be destroyed by telling the truth.
that's it. There's a lot of naivete about that. Now, the pictures that I have up right now, just to continue this vein, because I think this is interesting. I have those pictures of the spacecraft that one of our researchers caught, or aircraft. Strange government. It's a government aircraft, in my opinion. Okay, you might disagree with me, but I'm going to say it's a government aircraft. Okay, and
Didn't surprise me. I mean, looking at this, and because I've been told that this craft, this with a triangular pattern, is something that we developed it.
yeah,
And I
and
was told that many years ago, and it was developed using technology from crashed UFOs.
yeah, and that's where I want to go with this a little bit. But starting out with this, what the theme of this is that not only does the government, cover up scientific data, not only do they try to distort what's in the public so that it's very difficult to understand or very confusing to people that are trying to look at this. I even have active resistance to researchers, and these things show up around us a lot when we're taking pictures. Let's just say that, Marshall.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, and so have you faced resistance like this in your? I know it's going to sound stupid to anybody that knows you, but what kind of resistance and have you faced in your career around the Nibiru subject?
Well, I mean, this may sound strange to people. My life is kind of like a Louis L'Amour novel. There's guys out there with white hats, and then guys with black hats, and the guys with the black hats are always trying to destroy me, and the guys with the white hats very quietly from the background run interference and allow me to keep working. And it really started for me. I started really, I guess, getting on the map because in 2008, I released my video series, Surviving Planet X, in 2012, and it was 5 parts, and cumulatively was close to 9 million views. And that's not including everybody that downloaded it and reloaded it without my permission. And that put me on the map. And so one of the first things that happened was that I was being attacked by disinformation operatives operating out of the Crown. The Crown is a city state inside London in England. And this is a real hotbed of disinformation. These are the people that really do. England does rule the world. And I there were white hats. I don't want to talk about the particulars of it, but it was a terrible, vicious smear campaign. And there were white hats that helped me put that down. Okay. Then the second time I was attacked, and that was, boy, that was a broadside that could do nothing about it. In 2010, in 2009, the very first Planet X symposium was held in Italy, in Rome. A sellout event. The fire marshal had to close ticket sales. And we actually had someone there representing us. We had a publisher an Italian publisher, an academic publisher who had licensed our book, uh, Surviving Planet X. And we had, at that time, there was a Japanese edition that was licensed, Italian, and German. And so with the Italian edition, it was selling like hotcakes. I mean, bookstores in Italy, and it's very different there. They don't have the online sales there. It's really traditional. You go to bookstores in Italy. Uh, our books were flying off the shelves. And so we started getting positions that, frankly, publishers covet, as in they'd sell their children to get those positions in the store. We're talking about end caps, center aisles, register, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so our licensee there in Italy was just absolutely ecstatic. He had printed a long run an offset run, which was a few thousand books, which he anticipated would take him about a year to sell. Well, he sold his first run in 2 months. And, when something like that happens, it's like, eureka, I hit gold.
Mm-hmm.
And so he had just ordered a second long run and was telling me, and we had to, with our licensing agreement, he had to inform me what was going on. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I get an email from him that says, sorry, due to slumping sales, we've had to withdraw your title from market. I'm going, hold on a second. This guy just ordered a second long run. I mean, you got to really reach down into your pocket and pull up some serious ass shekels if you're going to do something like that. And you're not going to do that for a book that's, lame, born dead. It's, you want Planet X forecast? Yeah, look at the clearance rack. No, I mean, this thing was smoking. So I called and I said, okay, no nonsense, I want to know what's really happening. And he said, we received a call from our distributor, and they were instructed to tell us the following: that by order of the Vatican, all books on the topic were removed from the shelves, and by order of the Vatican, burned.
Oh my.
We're not returning your unsold books to you. And I was really stunned. I
Yeah.
said, well, are you going to fight this? And he said, are you crazy? It's the Vatican. You don't fight them, they'll bury you. And that was that. And so our books were, by the order of the Vatican, burned. All right. That, I think, constitutes suppression, wouldn't you say, Steve?
Yeah, censorship or something they call it, I think.
Yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah.
Then a lot of people think that Amazon is, God's blessing to publishers. It's really not. It's very Orwellian. Um, and what happened was the next time they took me down was after I had published some stuff. I put up some videos that I knew were controversial for them. I mean, it was information they didn't want exposed.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did was they organized a strike team. And the strike team, this is going to be like 4, 5, 6 operatives. And these people, this is what they do for a living. This is how they support their drinking habits and pay their child support. Okay. And it's literally, I'm not joking or being facetious. This is the kinds of people that they find to do this. You're not going to find people that are decent and honest and have integrity. You're going to find somebody that is, you wind up in one of those timeshare closing rooms with some guy that's got a big Rudolph the Red-Nosed, big red bulb of a nose because of his drinking habit, who's twisting your arm to buy a piece of property you know is not going to be a good deal.
Can you tell we're talking to an author, everybody? Keep going. Sorry.
And so the what they did was they purchased copies of all my Kindle editions, and then they hacked the Kindle editions. People think that publishers have good security with ebooks. No, Kindle is, somebody can hack a Kindle book, bypass its security as easy as a hot knife going through soft butter. I'm serious. And so that's what they did. They just hacked it. That's very, very easy. The tools are readily available out there. And then after they hacked it, what they did was they created download packets of all my titles. Then they took all of the titles and put them out on close to 200 different FTP free download sites. All right. And these sites are, they're operated worldwide, and basically they're just huge copyright violation bins. And but what the reason why they did that was I got a demand notice from Amazon, and they said that this was happening. They accused me of pirating my own books. Okay. Let me repeat that again. They accused me of stealing my own books and putting them on free download sites and pirating them for whatever crazy reason.
Yeah, so they were bringing a breach of contract against you on that.
And so what they were doing was literally, they said, um, we're going to pull your imprint, your own world books. And that's like taking a license plate off your car. You can't go on the road. And so when I got that notice, I mean, it was very clear that my publishing business was literally within days of extinction, and that they were moving to shut me down and put me out of business. And so I immediately started issuing takedown notices. And I would say approximately half of the sites, we said, we're saying, we're the publisher, this is illegal copy, we're demanding that you take it down. About half of them complied. The other half was like up your nose with a rubber hose.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly, there was one who was operating a free download site out of Vietnam. And if someone's doing this, you actually have to go into their jurisdiction and sue them. And it was like, great. So we're going to spend $50,000 to sue this guy in Vietnam to shut him down. Uh, don't have that, no way, no how. So they had me. I mean, Steve, they had me.
I know. I heard you. I hear you. This is not the
And,
yeah. This is not the
and
first.
they really, and then um, the people who saved my butt was Google. Okay. You go to the WWW consortium and you file complaints. They see so much of this, they don't care. They don't really respond. I went to Google and I said, "Hey, these people, uh, they're finding these pirated copies of our intellectual property because it's in your search engine and you're sending them there." And so Google started working with me. Um, the first thing that Google, I mean, I filed the complaint, I showed all the listings, everything. Google not only pulled those listings out of their database, but then they blacklisted those sites. All right. And that means with all the major search engines, if you're blacklisted on a search engine, then no one's going to index your site. You're put on an exclusion list. And, and the ones that we were doing this to were the ones that actually had ignored our takedown notices or told us literally that we'd get answers back like, kiss my ass, go to hell. Um, and these were the ones that they went after. And the worst of them was this one guy operating out of Vietnam, very heavy promoted site. Google actually threw down on this guy, and they went to the WWW and they had his domain name revoked. That's it. They
Wow.
took his business and killed it. And so within 5 working days, Google completely eradicated all copies of these pirated copies that Amazon was threatening to pull my imprint and to kill my business. And so I was able to respond to Amazon and say, we've remedied.
Wow.
That's it. We've remedied.
Sounds like a divine intervention to me,
And at that
Marshall.
point, by saying, "Hey, we remedied it," if they'd have pulled my imprint, I could have sued Amazon, and they knew it. And it was a long time before I got an answer, and the answer was very crusty and very mean, and said, "We're going to monitor you." Okay, so what really happened is was this something where, you know, Bezos personally was involved? No, not that I think the guy's a schmuck, but uh, this was something where, someone working there, the phone rings and they go, yeah, 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 yeah. Well, anything for a fellow member of the lodge. Boom. And that's how they went after me. But it was Google that literally saved me.
Isn't that something? You know, a lot of people have a dim view of Google, thinking that it's going to be this somehow this master, and maybe AI. Who knows with singularity, right? Who knows what's going to happen? But I can tell you right now that uh, Google is what provides the YouTube channel that I have, and
Yep.
I'm a cybersecurity expert. So that's the field that I come out of, and
Right.
I can tell you if you set up dual factor authentication on Google,
Mm-hmm.
and your YouTube products and your email and everything like that. That's the most secure you can get on the market right now.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, similarly with PayPal, I'm pretty big on them. But so the point being is that it took a major corporation to get you unlodged from that situation. It's funny, not funny, but
It did.
yeah,
I mean, it did. And they're always, I'm continually being attacked. I'm getting disoperatives who are trying to scam me into things. Um, they're continually nipping around the heels. And these people are really easy to spot because they have the mentality of petty retail clerks. And they get crusty, they get mean spirited.
oh yeah.
Once in a blue moon, one comes along that really does it pretty well. And when that happens, I do. I write them back and I say, "Well, tell your handler I spotted you, but you're pretty smooth."
Yeah, I've
And
had yeah,
it's kind of like World War II biplanes, and you're saluting the other guy before he burns into the ground.
all right, so we're looking at this UFO. We're talking about government resistance. Let's shift gears for a second because I want everybody in my audience to know that it's not easy to be a Nibiru researcher. I found out blast furnace in the last 6 months that I've learned some of these lessons that Marshall he talks about almost losing a business. There's been marriages, there's been families torn apart, there's been all kinds of damage and it's all and I really do blame the operatives because if they were telling the truth, none of this would be a problem.
That's right. You know, you got it exactly right. If they were telling the truth, nothing would be a problem. But, you know, it is a problem. There was a guy that did a wonderful book on Planet X Nibiru. And this was, I think, back around in 2008. And I was approached by a production company that, who are those comedians that operate out of Hollywood? Gosh, I mean, out of Las Vegas. And basically, they have a TV show and they're
Oh,
always
Penn and Teller.
Penn and Teller. Yeah, it was
Yep,
Penn and Teller.
yep.
So I had a producer from Penn and Teller wanted me to come on for an interview. And I said, no,
No way,
no,
man.
I'm not. No, Penn and Teller. Are you kidding? You're going to let me talk about it and then you're going to, smear me with crappy jokes. And so that's what they do. So I referred them to this other author because they were looking for it. And I said, well, he's looking to make his bones, so you can go talk to him. And they did, and he went for it. And so they sent out a production crew, 4 people, and you're going to have a field producer and a shooter and a sound and a lighting grip. And They spent a day and a half putting his interview in the can. And I remember it was Jason Rand, and he called me and says, "Oh, it was really exciting, man. We just knocked it out of the ballpark." And one of the things that they did was, he said, on the second day when they did the half day shoot, they went to a bookstore where his book was selling, and they were interviewing people just ad hoc for reactions. And this 10-year-old girl comes up, and they go, like Susie or whatever, "Susie, do you know anything about Planet X?" And she goes, "Yes, I heard all about it in science class." And she just starts rattling off facts, and everybody's jaw hits the ground. Tenure out of the mouth of babes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this was, yeah, I mean, he was just totally ecstatic after the shoot. This was going to be something utterly, totally cool. And, kind of like, I didn't hear anything about it. I asked him, I said, "Let me know when you're going to have a show date. I'll definitely want to watch it. I'm glad for you to get the coverage." And I didn't hear back from him. And I called him about a month later. And I said, "Well, how did it go? You got your production date?" And he said, "What happened was, after the film crew finished and they went back to the studio and they were in production, they were assembling the show, executive management came in, canceled the project, and fired without explanation the entire production crew. Fired them. And the production company that was under contract to Penn and Teller had their contract terminated. It was a complete, no explanation, you're dead, boom, gone."
Wow.
And I felt sorry for him because, it takes a lot of work to do something like that. It takes a lot of work to prepare for national shoots. And I've done those, like with History Channel and National Geographic. And to have all that time and effort, you go into it, and then boom, that's it. Or your thing that goes up, and then, they've been sitting there interviewing you in front of a camera for 2 or 3 hours. And I mean, you get cooked in front of those lights, man.
Sure. Yeah.
After that, it's like, oh, you're not ready for a 10-mile hike, I can tell you that. And then afterwards, the show airs, and there's a 10-second, you get 10 seconds, some glib little comment that you made, and that's all they use. These are the kinds of things that happen. So there's very, very tight control on the media. Um, as with this Penn and Teller thing, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, those guys they're professional jerks anyway. But
Oh yeah. I mean,
it's the kind of stuff that happens in the background. People don't, people go, you know, "Well, gee, it's a free and wonderful world, and there's free speech, and blah, 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 blah." And they have these naive, childish assumptions. But I'm going to tell you, there's the stuff that I see going on, you know, it's the perversion that goes on, how people are manipulated. And I mean, they are. In one of my videos, I talk about what I call expectation stampedes. And this is something the elites do brilliantly. What they do is they find a topic that really is a hot button topic for people. And then somebody comes along and slaps a date on it. And the elites know that that date is a non event. But knowing that it's a non event, what they do is they just promote and pump it up, baby. They pump it. Classic case in point. Ever heard of blood moon tetrad theory?
yes.
Okay. That was a stampede.
Oh, and it was directed right at my demographic. I mean, smack
Exactly. They
dab in the
wanted,
middle of the Christian, right in the eyeballs, man.
that's it. And what they wanted to do was, first off, blood moon tetrad theory was something completely came out of the blue. Nobody saw that coming. All right. and we didn't see it coming. When it did hit and was going, we did publish an article on it, and where we just said, you know, we're not. It's not connecting the dots for us. All right, and as it were, the position that we took on it was, frankly, it was on the money. Okay. Um, just like the position we took on Nancy Leader back in 2002, that she was just creating zeta hysteria with her 2003 prediction of a flyby. And so
Oh, who
we
can
did
forget
that. We,
2012? I mean, 2012 to me, Marshall, and you talk about the stampede. I know even Nibiru researchers were taken in by part of this, and I understand it, but the media, the movies, I mean, it was just it was sickening, really.
well, you know, let me tell you a couple of things about 2012, okay?
Sure.
That put a different spin on it. And, for example, people always talk about Y2K and how that was a bogus deal. Well, when I was in the computer business, I was a consultant. I worked with companies like Lockheed Martin, Oracle, Sun, Hewlett Packard, so forth. Okay. And Hewlett Packard actually contracted me to write a book that was, aimed at revealing what they knew was the Achilles heel of the internet. It was a very successful book for them. And when people read it, it sold a lot of computers without saying exactly what it was. It was, in other words, it was one of those you could paint the picture deals so clearly enough that somebody that couldn't figure out how to use Excel or Word could go, uh-oh, yeah, we need to jump on this. And there was an Achilles heel. It was a Titanic that did not hit the berg. And you had companies that were spending vast amounts of money in Y2K remediation, and there should have been ticker tape parades for the people that did this. But you had, bombast. You had these professional idiots who didn't understand anything, didn't research anything, didn't understand the real threat. And they were going, we didn't have our disaster off with their heads. Instead of saying, let's give them a ticker tape parade because they turned the Titanic away from the berg in time.
Oh, let me tell you another story about that. I'm also in that world. Used to be in that world, right?
Yeah.
Had it not been for Y2K, I don't think India would be enjoying their coding status right now. We basically had to hire India.
Yeah,
That's because we
they
didn't have enough
did.
labor. So they set up these huge. Listen, you folks, if you thought Y2K was a non event, you weren't with the people that Marshall and I were with because they were working 24/7 for a year in advance with coding. They called them coding factories, guys. Okay.
Yes,
And they had
coding
they
factories.
had to actually crank out all this new code, and that's what prevented there from being any major infrastructure outages in 2012. I agree with you, Marshall. I saw it.
And the Yeah, and the panic was caused by gold brokers who just wanted to sell coins. They were the ones talking about stuff falling out of the sky and nuclear reactors and all of that stuff. But you know, so it's a point where things get perverted and twisted around, and they think that. Now, on December 21, 2012, uh, this was something that I was actually interviewed by, because I had written a book, Planet X, in 2012. And, it was a date, it was catching everyone's attention. And, but, really the only position I had on December 21, 2012 was, where are you going to be on that date? In other words, what are you going to be doing? Are you going to be in planning and preparation? Or are you going to be, going to the mall and doing something worthless? And uh, I was interviewed by National Geographic in August of 2012, and the producer asked me, he said, okay, Marshall, is there a direct correlation or direct linkage between Planet X and December 21, 2012? And I said, At this time, we are not seeing evidence of a direct correlation or direct relationship. What we are seeing is that it's coincidental, but that's not to say either phenomena is irrelevant or it's not to demean the credibility of either, but we're not seeing linkage. And National Geographic was not really happy with that answer. They wanted, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, It's like, and I wasn't gonna do that. And so consequently, they filmed me for. We spent 2 days filming me, and I got a 10-second soundbite out of it. But interestingly enough, we went back in 2015 as a result of some work that another researcher that I knew was doing and prompted us to revisit December 21, 2012. And the reason why I told National Geographic I didn't see a relationship was the only empirical data that we had on December 21, 2012 were the Arbitron ratings for the cable companies and the profits they were making, which were stupendous numbers. It was, delicious fear porn for them. Okay. And they really caught it and they really went with it. But what we did was we said, okay, let's look at empirical data from December 21, 2012 going forward, because the Mayans were not looking for a harbinger or a sign in the heavens that said, today you're going to die. It's like, why bother? Not terribly logical. What you're really looking for is something that says you got to get ready for something bad coming. Like remember from the Bible, the story of Joseph, 7 lean cows, 7 fat cows. Remember that one?
Yeah, the dream he had,
So,
right? Mm-hmm. Or the
okay.
Pharaoh had,
So
rather. Yeah.
what they were looking for was they wanted to know if it's time, if we got 7 lean cows coming, basically. And they were looking at the sky with regard to a very specific celestial alignment. And the ancients were very keen on celestial alignments, and they observed the sky that way in intense detail. They would look up at night. We don't. We just turn on the television. Uh, well, we were looking for there. We were seeing stunning patterns in a wide range of data sets. So what we did was we took the most logical two data sets, which would be meteors and earthquakes. And with meteors, it was remember Coyote Roadrunner cartoons with the Acme rocket, and the coyote would strap on and boom, you would go straight up and then straight down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we looked at the observation of meteors, particularly fireballs, the big ones that are burning through the skies. And from December 21, 2012 moving forward, and it was like Coyote on an Acme rocket, boom, straight up. It was explosive. And then we, and I will tell you, it hasn't, the Acme rocket and the Coyote have not come back down to Earth yet. It's still up there. Okay. It's still, if you read our latest science article, you're going to see that the stats are still mind blowing. And then we looked at earthquakes. Now, with earthquakes, here is where people really are, we're being lied to
So
very
hard.
steadily by USGS.
Sorry.
Pardon?
I, as you were saying, we're being lied to. I accidentally put out so hard, like we're being lied to really hard. Charlie doesn't like it either. Keep going.
So yeah, he sounds like your pooch is definitely not a USGS fan.
He's not, and
And
I have to have a guard dog. I just feel better with one. But go ahead.
well, what USGS has been doing for years, and if you notice that, have you ever seen an earthquake they haven't downgraded?
Yeah,
They always downgrade earthquakes. That'll come out and says it's a 5.1. USGS says it's a 4.8. It's a 5.0. It's a 4.7. They're always doing that. Now, the reason why they're doing that, now you're seeing where the disinformation operatives are coming out and spewing their filth, is that they're going, major earthquakes 5.0 and above are going down, not up. So the doomsdayers are wrong. So these are the people who are, you know, they're like, it's the house. They're sitting at the roulette table, and it reminds me, from Casablanca, put your money on red seven or whatever, because that's where the roulette wheel, you've got it programmed to stop. And the they program the numbers. And if you say, fine, major quakes 5.0 and above, and you hear the USGS that it's going down, take those numbers and go 4.0 and above, and all of a sudden it starts exploding. You take everything from all of the quakes that are reported of all magnitudes, and you're back on the Coyote Roadrunner Acme rocket, and you're going straight up.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's a ride, just a ride to hell. And so this is how they're manipulating the public. And the public really, the public plays into it because this is really what people want to hear. I use the analogy, it's like a housewife who's washing her husband's work shirts and finds 5 different colors of lipstick on the collar. And when she confronts him with it, he goes, honey, don't worry. It was just one woman who likes to wear a lot of different shades of lipstick, but she's not in my life anymore because you're the only one for me. And she goes, okie dokie. And that's it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, this is what the public does. They have this okie dokie thing because they don't really want to hear anything that says, you might want to think about the fact that life as you presently know it is going to come to an end. People don't want to hear that. And so it's not that the government is totally genius, in a Machiavellian sense. It's not like that. They're not totally genius. They just have people that literally want to be lied to.
Right.
It's so easy to lie to people who want you to lie to them.
Or how does it go? It's the hardest thing in the world is to try to unlearn a truth, they say.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
here you've been kind of lulled to sleep. I know, and again, when I lurched out of my sleep on this issue, I came out mad. I was like mad. I was like, how could I, listen, this deception, this cloud of untruth, it starts when you're born in this country. It
yeah,
starts when you're born. You
yeah.
know, the way that you're going to get handled, the immunizations, the way you're going to go through the process, the meat grinder, the schooling process, all of this stuff is just like program, 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 program. And I guess I never realized how badly infected I was.
It's funny. My wife and I right now, Jennifer never saw the Hunger Games series. And so we got the whole set from Netflix. Yippee, tie, all 4 of them. And so we're going through them and we're sitting there, we're watching and we're going, this isn't a fictional thing in the future. This is today. This is our world.
They've got
We
us
are our
all split up.
world.
Yep. They've got us all split up in our little camps so that we believe everybody else is the enemy when in fact we're all humans.
That's right. That's right. And so, but the whole point of everything that they're doing, all right, we talked about it last time I was on, and it's simple. During the coming tribulation, we're going to have mile high walls of water hitting the coastlines. And they're going to come either from impact events or the pole shift, but either way, okay, they're going to hit the coastlines like hydraulic sandpaper and just tear everything to pieces. And everybody's sitting there thinking that they know better are going to drown like rats. Okay? Well, the fact is, the people who live along coastlines are the ones who are most heavily programmed. They're the ones that actually are the most resistant to the truth in terms of if you're looking on overall balance. I mean, there's people everywhere, that have woken up and they're going, I'm going to believe my lying eyes. Thank you. But I find that populations along the coastlines, the greatest amount of effective manipulation is there. And this is where people are going to die. The whole reason behind the way that the blood moon tetrad theory was hyped. And I to me, my first rule of prophecy is always be mindful of it, but never live in expectation of it. And what they did by hyping it that way was, you had folks that were really not watching or in awareness. They were new to awareness. That was the one thing Blood Moon Tetrad thing did, was it brought a lot of people who were otherwise going, that's all nonsense. I don't want to hear about it. Nothing's going to happen. All of a sudden they're going, well, what am I seeing here? And then what are they doing? They're going into they're talking to their friends, their neighbors, and their families about it and all of this. And then what the elites did, that was very well orchestrated, but it went well over the top, was that they organized 1 month of a convergence of 3 non-events: the startup of CERN, visit of the Pope, and blood moon tetrad theory. So what happened was, it was conspiracy theory month par excellence. And all of these people were just running around, and the speculation was wild, and it was being manipulated and fueled. And sure enough, what happens? Well, blood moon tetrad theory, been there, done that, bought the t-shirts, didn't work. Okay, the Pope's visit. The only thing we could conclusively say about the Pope's visit is that he should fire his speechwriter. And then, when it comes to CERN, well, we never get the straight story anyway, but we didn't all fall into a black hole that month. So it was all across the board, all right, a beautifully orchestrated, non-event. And what happened was, all over the place, what you don't see afterwards is all of the people who are like, oh my God, now I got egg on my face. They're going to work, they're looking at their families, and everyone's going, ha 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 ha,
What an
there
idiot!
you
Yeah,
go
right.
again.
Yeah.
Boy, you got sucked into it, you stupid fool. And they're laughing, having a good laugh at their expense. Now, once they have a good laugh at their expense, what's the next logical conclusion? Well, then that person is going to say, well, I'm not going to get sucker baited like that again. I am simply not going to be in awareness. And they snort off, and that's it. They stop looking, they stop thinking, they stop using their own minds,
Mm-hmm.
they just tune it out. That is the point. Now, they were aiming this at the Christian audience because this was really a new audience coming into it. Prior to blood moon tetrad theory, Planet X was really dominated by spiritual thinkers, independent thinkers, but folks that are checklist thinkers or doctrinal and dogma thinkers. It didn't really have any traction with that audience. I mean, I can remember a time when ministers were going on their shows and just saying Planet X is nonsense, don't believe in it, it's stupid, stupid, stupid. It really changed things around. So you have all of these Christians who are new to this field, this area, coming in the droves. Then they're humiliated with an engineered, and let's be very blunt, it was an engineered non event, expectation stampede, as I call them. And what did they do? I'm not going to get sucker baited by that nonsense again. I'm going to keep my mouth shut and my eyes closed, which exactly serves the intention of the elites because the single largest demographic in our country are mainstream checklist Christians. Okay. And so what they did was they were able to eviscerate a trend there was an awareness trend amongst checklist Christians and who are new to this audience. And then that way they would keep their mouth shut, their eyes closed, and stay where they are. Now, where are they staying? The vast majority of humanity lives along a coastline. And so this had nothing to do with if you believe in Jesus or whatever your righteousness is or any of that. It's pure demographics, period, plain demographics.
Yeah, it's marketing.
This was the Christians living along the coastline statistically are what we call the rat and the snake. They're that huge thump right in the middle. And so what they've done is all of these people that were starting to come into awareness have halted their path to awareness so that they can be there to drown like rats when the mile high waves of come in and kill them. It's a fait accompli. I mean, you got to give the devil his due.
You do,
He
and
won this round.
and what's interesting about what you're saying is that there's been several Christian researchers that went through that same kind of cycle of discreditation and all the things that they're going through, like a guy like Tom Horn, who also believes that the elites are intending to do basically mass murder. So there's a lot of folks. So this is the thing that one of the things I wanted to hit on while I'm with you. And you heard I apologize for my Christian fundamentalist friends that were insulting to you, by the way, as my guest on my show.
I appreciate that. I really respect the way you stood up to that. And
Jesus would never treat a guest that way, Marshall.
I was really good. I mean, I'll tell you, don't worry about it. For me, I've dealt with this kind of nonsense for the years, and it's why God invented the delete key. All right.
Amen. But the point I wanted to make was that this is that Hunger Games idea, guys. Okay, so let's play with that for a second. So they've got us all in our little compartmented, what the world should look like, what we should dress like, what should we eat, what should we wear, all that, and what we should most importantly, who we should believe and trust and who we shouldn't believe and trust. Right.
Right.
Well, it just so happens that there's a sage over in Tribe B named Marshall Masters. And then there's another sage over in Tribe D named Dr. Richard Allen Miller. And then there's another guy over in Tribe L. I could just go on and on. And because they've got us split up like this Hunger Games groups into the 12 groups that don't ever even communicate with each other, we've lost the ability to hear and look and see the whole story. Because I can't get the whole story unless I listen to the other 11 tribes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got to listen around, and but I mean, I view it, and I don't want to
stop. What I'm saying is stop being separated.
On fundamentalist Christians or what I call checklist thinkers.
I do, but go ahead.
I understand. For me, there's checklist thinkers in every faith. Okay, so it really, to me, it's not a per se Christian thing or a Jewish thing or whatever.
No.
For me, it is: are you a doctrinal thinker or are you a spiritual thinker? If you're a doctrinal thinker, you're going to say things like, "Well, that sounds interesting. I'm going to ask somebody else to explain it to me because I'm too stupid to think for myself." A spiritual thinker is going to go, what exactly am I looking at here? And you're going to sort it out on your own. In other words, spiritual thinkers in a very real sense are people who take responsibility for the knowledge they own and incorporate into their lives. And doctrinal thinkers just say, I'll pay somebody else to do my thinking for me because I'm more interested in doing these other things. All right. And so it really is ownership of knowledge. That's the big difference. And you are a spiritual Christian. And I will tell you, Steve, I mean, I am not myself a Christian, but in terms of what is coming down the road and whether or not we are going to prevail and have a Star Trek future, the pivotal group that's going to enable that possibility will be spiritual Christians. They're going to take a heavy amount of abuse, they're going to be battered on, but they're the ones that are going to have the courage to stand up and just tell it like it is. And they're going to pay dearly for it. But so to me, I'm very fond of spiritual Christians. I really like them. They're people that they're the kind of people that say, you know what, I'm going to put on a backpack, wander out in the desert for 40 days, and sort it out on my own.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right,
right, right.
and
That's
that's
right.
exactly what it takes. And so people who I don't care if you're agnostic or atheist, whatever, Nietzsche said God is dead. God said Nietzsche is dead. Uh, boils down to, are you going to let somebody else do your thinking? And what goes to that is what I see from a lot of scientists. There are scientists that I think are really noble and phenomenal and they do the right things. And then there's a whole lot of them out there that say, you know what? I'm the only one that has the right to be wrong because you're too stupid to think it through for yourself. And people agree with that. That's what a doctrinal thinker will do. When the scientist says, I'm the only one that has a right to be wrong because you're too stupid to think for yourself, a doctrinal thinker is going to go, oh, okay, I understand that. I agree. A spiritual thinker is going to go, screw you and the horse you rode in on, cowboy.
Yeah, you're not going to get that one by me, man. Um,
Yeah.
but that kind of is a segue into, and I'm still interested in your church a little bit too, Marshall. Maybe the last couple minutes we can spend talking about how does that relate to the theology that you're promoting in your new church?
Well, the theology of the church is it's Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis at knowledgemountain.org. And what I'm really doing is we're in service to spiritual thinkers who are in awareness. We're non-denominational teaching church. One of the things that when I first started doing Planet X research, and this was back in 2001, I was a born heart geek. Okay, logic is Tweeting Bird, live long and prosper. I was a Spock wannabe, and the problem is that if all you have is science, it's going to lead you into a pretty dark place. And there really does come a point where you've got to reach out to God. You've got to reach out to Creator, and that's when you start to have a sense of hope and purpose and a belief that something good is going to come out of this. Yes, there's a dark cloud that's coming, but in every dark cloud is a silver lining, and that's really what my Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis is about, is that we focus in on that silver lining because I believe the most likely people who are going to be able to survive what's coming in the last window of opportunity. Last window of opportunity is we're all looking up at the sky, seeing it, pooping our collective pants. And when everybody goes on CNN to see what they're, remember, what are the professionals telling us? We're the only ones that have a right to be wrong because you're too stupid to think for yourself. And everybody's going, yeah, yeah, they're right, they're right. Okay, well, they're going to go on CNN, and what it is, and CNN is just an elitist Pravda, and they're going to say, gee, it's an interesting light show. Don't worry. Go back to the mall, go shopping, go to work, pay your taxes, so forth, and pay your credit cards off. All right. And people are going to go, okay, yeah, great, cool, because that's what I want to hear. And they're going to do that. But then there's going to be a bunch of people who are going to say, excuse me, I think I'm going to bleed my lying eyes. All right. And what I see is a clear and present danger. And so, what I'm really doing is organizing a teaching effort to help these faith-based organizations quickly mobilize into survival communities. All right. And not just survival for the sake of survival. That's dog eat dog, Mad Max world. That's really, and that's the wrong way to go.
That's a non-starter, Marshall. Yep.
It's a non-starter. Okay. You know, the motto of our church, if you go to knowledgemountain.org, and the first thing you're going to see at the top is 11 words that say exactly what we're all about. Tribulation survival by walking humbly with God in service to others.
And by the way, I have your site up right now. We're looking at it as we're talking. So yeah, kind of paging
Thank
around.
you.
Yeah, and it's
And
yeah, we're
this
on
is
that.
what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're objective driven. If you're, yeah, there's a lot of belief systems, and their plan B is, if in doubt, refer back to plan A. That's not a viable plan B.
No, it's not.
So, whatever the core faith is, and that's fine. If it's not broke, don't fix it. What we really do is fill in the gaps. You're not going to go to a mainstream church and they're going to have study groups on Planet X. So continue going to your mainstream church, but if you want to fill in the gaps, you come here. And for spiritual Christians, I feel that it's a real relief, because they're the ones that wind up getting thrown out of churches and study groups, because they're asking questions that are not on the thou shalt only ask questions from this list. They're the ones asking the embarrassing questions, and they get bounced. Our church is about the embarrassing questions no one wants to talk about, because it really relates to survival. And as we say, tribulation survival by walking humbly with God in service to others. And that's it. That's what we're all about. And so for those that want to see our philosophy and what we're doing, visit knowledgemountain.org. And it's interesting that the folks that are coming in from a wide range of backgrounds and from a wide range of faiths, but we all share a common belief in Creator. We all share awareness about what is coming, and we all want to be proactive and objective driven in terms of how to get through it. There's folks that say God wants everybody to survive. Well, I'm sorry. Where does it say in the Bible that God wants everybody to physically survive? And where does it say in history that there is such a policy? God's interested in your soul, your eternal soul. But your body is your business. And if you're going to throw it away on people who are lying to you because you just go, okie dokie, well, when you die, then, you have nobody to blame but yourself. But this is about more than just surviving a tribulation. It's going to be 10 years. This is all very well documented in my book, Being in It for the Species, and how it's going to roll out. But you're not going to get through 10 years of misery, fight the resurgence of the elites who are going to come back to re-shackle us into slavery. We're going to have ET exploitation. I mean, it's going to be horrors upon horrors. But our destiny, our birthright destiny, at the end of all of this, is to have a Star Trek future, not a Hunger Games future. That's our birthright. And if the only way we're going to get cheated out of our birthright is if we sell it off for a bowl of lentils. And it's going to be spiritual Christians that are going to go, no, don't do it.
No. This is an eternal game we're playing here. It's not a short game. This is a just like everything, right? In life, I've learned that if you could just remember for a moment that it's temporary, if you can get your mind there, you can get through a lot of hard things just remembering that it's temporary, things like that. And that little temporary period of pain where they're going to try to manipulate and hurt and mark and genetically rape and all kinds of things that they're going to try to do to the human race, you can say no.
That's right. That's right. And yeah, and remember, when you say no to the elites, you're not saying no to the carrot. you're saying no to the stick.
Yeah. What a great place to end it. Marshall, I appreciate again you coming on. What a great show. What a great line of discussion. And I'm going to learn more about your church. I think there might be some potential for synergy with what we're trying to do at WSO right now. We're trying to build local groups to start building communities and reaching out to other people that have been made aware just so they can know each other, right? Just like, hey, there is another person in Colorado Springs that knows Nibiru is coming, right? Um,
That's right. You know, as a matter of fact, what I'm working on right now is I'm authoring an interfaith program, and uh, it's so that we could work with someone like you and to help you because our job is about teaching. It's not about driving membership. It's about being in service to others. We're a teaching church,
yeah.
and through interfaith, I want to explain to other people because one of the things that I see, Steve, is folks just get overwhelmed by all of the survival thinking. The beans, the bullets, and the bunkers. And it's not about beans, bullets, and bunkers. You do that, you're gonna hit a wall. It's about self-sufficiency knowledge, hope for the future, and the knowledge that you are not alone. If you have those three things, and you know that it's not about holding on to things, but it's holding on to each other, you've got the most important survival skills you could ever hope to possess.
Oh, bless you, man. That was a great thing. Thank you, Marshall Masters, pastor of the Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis, author, longtime Nibiru researcher. Thank you for being with us.
Been my pleasure, Steve.